Okay.
We're so grateful to have this is the beginning of April. If you're joining us live, we always appreciate that. If you're watching these recordings, Dr. Mary Frons has taken the first slot in the Wednesday morning series, the first week of the month. So here we are, April, and Dr. Mary is going to be talking about the trust solution, which is the book she wrote. So she's been taking components of that to help us learn more about how to rebuild trust in relationships. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mary. She's going to tell you a little bit about herself, and then we're going to get started.
Great. Thanks so much, Tammy. I'm happy to be here this morning. And I'm here for my monthly webinar where I talk about my book, The Trust Solution. It's about a couple's guide to healing from intimate betrayal. And it includes a 6-step process for couples where they can go through these steps to really heal the wounds and repair trust in the rupture that occurs after intimate betrayal. So today I'd like to talk about steps 4 and 5, and the next time we'll discuss the 6th step. When a relationship has been healed by intimate betrayal, it's one of the most challenging situations that a committed partnership can face. So I'm going to review the 3 stages that a relationship goes through when there's a discovery of this situation. And the first stage is the rupture or the crisis stage, and that's focused on calming the chaos and the pain from the discovery. I talked about that in a previous webinar, which you can go back to and listen to if you'd like to hear more about the crisis stage and what the needs are for both partners and how they prepare to get ready for the active repair stage, which is where the 6 steps toward active healing the relationship take place. And I just like to define some terms that I usually use in the webinars. I usually use the term healing partner for the betrayer, and I use hurt partner for the one that experienced the betrayal. So today we're continuing to talk about the active repair steps, the 6 active repair steps to restore trust and heal the relationship. So to review the first 3 steps of repair that I talked about last time, they are accountability, honesty, and agreements. And accountability is taking responsibility for the harm that's been caused by to the relationship. Honesty is coming clean and filling in those missing gaps about behaviors that the hurt partner still has questions about. It often involves doing a formal disclosure, which really helps to establish a line in the sand where trust becomes a paramount value in the relationship. And the third step is forming agreements. And this is so important because there's many implicit relationships that a couple has in their relationship. But this is a chance to really clarify the expectations of each partner. And I suggest even putting those in writing if they're a little bit vague or if there's been a problem with an agreement. So making specific agreements, it's a step that continues through the whole repair process. If there's something that the couple is experiencing difficulty with, it's good to sit down and clarify what are our expectations and what kind of an agreement can we make about moving forward with this issue. And in the beginning, with the beginning steps of repair, usually the agreements are really needed around boundaries around the relationship. That's about boundaries with people outside the couple. It's about boundaries for each of the partners. And transparency is another huge issue. There's a lack of trust at this stage, and words need to be backed up with actions. So specific actions that can demonstrate and provide the transparency really help reduce conflict, such as things with giving access to GPS or passwords. So those are some of the things that are accomplished in the agreement stage. And then we're moving on to the 4th stage, which I want to talk about today, which is evaluating the progress of the repair process. The last 3 steps are evaluating the progress, improving attunement and empathy, and learning communication and conflict repair skills. So I'd like to emphasize that all of these 6 steps overlap And they're part of the whole process after the first year where a betrayal was discovered, as the couple is continuing to heal and establish trust again in their relationship. Accountability and honesty and crafting agreements are things that are going to continue over the first year, and they're going to continue and be modified and changed. But they help the partners really cross a bridge to each other, to increase their understanding of what's needed, to increase the connection. And they're so important to rebuild the trust. They provide all these 6 steps, really provide a sturdy platform to build a renewed relationship on. And that's the 3rd stage, after the active repair steps, and where the couple is feeling good about a new dynamic taking place in their relationship. Then they can move on to the renewal stage. And that's where there's more focus on mutuality and identifying some things that the relationship might need for long-term satisfaction. This is the stage where couples maybe will work on repairing their sexual or physical relationship, where they work on more mutuality. They'll investigate the needs that they each have in a little deeper way. And this is a really important step where they're going to create a new relationship instead of going back to the relationship they had. So today I'm talking about the 4th and 5th step in the repair stage. So the 4th step is about evaluating the progress. And this is where you need to really use your rational mind as well as your emotional mind. Because sometimes you can be having a bad day, and the hurt partner can react from a feeling state that's based on the mood that they're experiencing. And it's important to remember that moods vary. Some days you can feel really bad about the relationship because you're having a bad day. So it's good to have some objective markers that you can look at to really evaluate the progress in the relationship. You want to evaluate if the betrayed partner is really changing and really committed to honesty, and they have a dedication to being a real, full, and transparent partner. So what you look for when you're evaluating the progress is there effort? Do you see better communication and your partner making attempts to really communicate? Are they showing interest in understanding your thoughts and feelings? So I look at the repair process as a continuum that flows from desire to intention to action to practice, with the goal of an authentic connection. So it starts with the desire on the part of the healing partner to repair and make amends to the relationship. And then they need to make their intention very, very clear to the hurt partner. And once that intention's made clear, then the hurt partner can start joining them in the active repair process. And this is where they need to put their intentions into practice with specific behaviors. You want to look at how they practice rigorous honesty, how they follow through with the agreements that you're making. And a really important part of this evaluation is the attitude and the spirit behind the actions. This is where there needs to be a gentle way of communicating when something's missing or not quite working out. And the healing partner needs to understand that they need to understand that kinds of actions that are effective in restoring the trust. So this is an opportunity in evaluating the progress for them to create just a deeper understanding of what each other needs and where they can talk about these things in a non-destructive, emotionally regulated way. If one of the partners is frustrated, like particularly if the hurt partner is not seeing a result that they had hoped for, then it's important to be able to identify this, as it's really going to impede progress if there's a need that's going on, and it can harden into resentment. So it's good to see these as opportunities to refine the skills and to help the healing partner better understand the hurt partner and what they need. Now, how do you communicate about these specific needs in an effective way? One thing you don't want to do is you don't want to globalize about the whole relationship. And if you're having a bad day, to say, oh, the relationship is not good, it's really a good idea to look at what specifically is going on that you feel is not meeting your needs. And this is where your support systems are really important. So you might like immediately go to a default powerless state where you feel helpless, and then you might go into states of frustration or anger. But if you go to your support systems, to your therapist, to your group, to your peers, and talk about this, they might be able to help you identify more of what's really going on with you. And they might be able to have some help in locating a perspective about a need that maybe is triggering you. There's always things that are outside of our awareness. And that's where therapy is so important, that we have people to help bring things that are outside of what we're seeing into our perspective. So I want to talk about a really important step that you can use in this process to help the whole evaluation and communication of the needs move forward. And I don't know, many of you might already know about this. It's called the check-in process. And I think this tool is so important. And with the couples I see that use this tool in their relationship do much better and heal much faster, because there's a regular, predictable communication about how they're each feeling, what's going on. It really starts that new connection that you're looking for, moving in a good direction. So it also helps with empathy and increasing the awareness and understanding of each other. So I really can't emphasize the power of the check-in process enough. It also helps with better attunement and with restoring with openness and honesty, with listening, with compassion, without judgment. These are all ways that the communication gets deepened, where you're talking about more important things of more substance that are really important during this repair process. And it's like any discipline or habit, you have to keep practicing it. And that's why I stated that you can have your intention, but practice is really needed. And that's what I emphasize in these 6 steps. I talk about the tools that can help be utilized on a regular day-to-day basis, that practice putting these skills into the daily fabric of the relationship. These are what move things forward. Having that check-in process as a regular habit in your relationship is going to move things forward. It's like any ritual. It will get easier and easier as your brain circuitry becomes rewired. Instead of going to an old default pathway where you might go to avoidance or frustration, you are empowered to do something positive about what you're feeling, and something that can really empower you and move the whole process forward. It's like the practice is like, on your tennis forehand. You need to keep practicing it. And then eventually the ball goes right where you want it to go. So another important point at this stage is to be able to emotionally regulate. And the check-in process is a good place to practice emotional regulation. That really needs some work sometimes. And what I recommend is, if you're starting a check-in and things become very dysregulated, it's good to ask for a pause, and for both partners to agree that if anybody feels dysregulated, it's okay to pause and come back to it and not give up on it, to not say we just can't do this. You can learn to do it if there's the intention and the desire and the willingness. And it's, if you can see, where does it go awry sometimes? I have one couple that they said, we just can't get through the check-in. The reason they can't get through it is because one of them would become so emotionally unregulated And then they would resort to cross complaining and blame shifting, and the whole thing would fall apart. So as you're evaluating progress, these are things that you can look at. If you're experiencing this blame shifting, that's something that would need to be identified as a need. And the check-in process provides a place to identify each partner's need as you're continuing to go through the repair process. So I'm going to go through this formula for the check-in, and it's called Thanos, and Thanos stands for bringing light on a situation. And so this is a formula you can start with, and then you can modify it later if you need to, but it's easy to start with. So the components of Thanos are feelings, owning something, needs, F-A-N, feelings, appreciations or acknowledgement, then needs, then owning up to something. If there's something that you're aware of that's important to take responsibility, to be accountable for, it really strengthens the healing when one partner can own up to something that they'd like to do better. Perhaps if somebody got upset and was being critical, owning that they noticed that they did this and they'd like to do it better, that's not one of their values, that they are working on that. And this is really, really helpful, that each partner can feel reassured that they each have their own things to work on. So it's F-A-N-O-S, and S stands for sobriety, struggles, and self-care. So it's a chance for both partners to communicate about what are they struggling with right now. And it's like a window. It's like letting yourself be known. It's a chance to offer support and empathy for what your partner's going through. Sobriety is where the healing partner reports on what things they're doing in their recovery process. Are they going to meetings? Are they reading literature? Are they talking with their sponsor? And this is so important because so many of the hurt partners really want to feel that they can build the trust that the healing partner is working on it by trying to learn more about their addiction and what happened to them and trying to do the work that's necessary. So if they don't have to chase them around and ask them questions about it, which is not a good dynamic for the relationship, this is an opportunity for the healing partner to just report, this is what I'm doing this week. And at the same time, the hurt partner can report, what are they doing to support themselves, to come to their own assistance? Do they have a support group? Are they attending some therapy? Are they reading about things? So this is a really important exchange. Now, for the feelings, that's where you just each identify some feeling words. It's good to put more specific words on your feeling. It helps them be more understandable. Instead of angry or sad, if you can put something that's more frustrated or disappointed or hopeful or anxious, the more specific the words can be, the better. There's lists on the internet. You can just look for feeling word list and print out a list that you can use and just look down there and see which words resonate. It's an easy way to kind of increase your feeling vocabulary. So talking again about the A, appreciation or acknowledgement. This is so important to regularly offer appreciation and acknowledgement to your partner for what they are doing. This really strengthens a relationship and the connection for the long term. John Gottman says there need to be 5 positive appreciations for every neutral or negative communication. So really trying to put that as a ritual and a step into your relationship, and using the check-in process helps you get used to doing this on a regular basis. And then I wanted to talk about the needs step, which is this is the place where you can, as you're evaluating, how's the repair going, you can see, is there a need that I have that's not being addressed? And sometimes it can be something like a small issue, like, when I asked you to pick up this at the store, you seem to forget, and that makes me feel not important. And the emphasis is on like how you experience it, not you never do this, or it's not put out in a critical or blaming way. So the needs don't have to be something that you need from your partner necessarily. Even it can be, I need to be able to focus more on my work, or I need a little bit more time for myself. And it's just a way of increasing your understanding of each other and showing more interest, showing more curiosity. Those are two really important qualities in the repair process: increasing the curiosity and the interest in each other, especially for the hurt partner, because the healing partner. The healing partner really needs to demonstrate that interest in understanding what are the needs, the specific needs that the hurt partner is feeling. There's some questions you can ask yourself as you're going through this evaluation process. And you can ask yourself, are you having the check-ins according to your agreement? And this is like part of follow through. This is like necessary, where the actions need to be put into place, into action. And it's an important marker to see if the healing partner is taking responsibility for those agreements. Are they withdrawing or being passive? That's not a positive indication of where things are going. And that needs to be identified, and a request needs to be made that it's really important to me that you initiate the check-in process, and to having an agreement for a regular schedule where it takes place. It's a really important step in the repair process. So are they initiated by the person that was specified in the agreement? And then as you're evaluating it, how do you feel about how the check-in process is going? Do you see any concerns or problems with how it's done? You can modify it as you go along. I suggest using the Thanos Formula first because it's so simple and easy. And I think all the things that are addressed in the Thanos Formula are so important. It hits on some of the big categories that really need to be part of the regular communication. But as you go along, there might be other things that you'd like to add to it or change. The couples that I see that do the best are ones that really regularly practice a check-in. I see so much progress so quickly with couples that are regularly doing this. It really shows a commitment to each other, to interest in each other, and to really fine-tuning the skills and making sure that they're there in a way that you can both feel good about. Another important thing is, and this is going to be covered in the 5th step. I'm going to move to the 5th step now, which is improving attunement and empathy. And the check-in process is also really good for the 5th step. So what is attunement? Attunement is learning how to take corrective action in the moment. It's learning how to recognize and respond to your partner's needs and bids in an effective way. It's being able to read your partner. It's noticing what they're feeling. So what do you do to increase attunement and empathy? So one thing is to check out assumptions, not to just operate on assumptions that stay in your own head. You want to, if your partner is expressing something with body language or mood, you don't want to just assume, oh, they might be upset with me about this. You really want to ask them, You need to ask, the healing partner needs to ask more questions. Don't just go on an assumption, because when you do that, there's just, you're crossing paths. You're not really connecting. So if you ask a question about what the hurt partner's feeling, and then, you can even check out if you got it right by saying, so what I'm understanding is that you're upset today because I didn't call when you were expecting me to call and let me know what time I'd be home. Instead of just thinking, oh, she's upset because I did this or did that. You really want to know what it is, because otherwise, how are you going to change it? How is that conflict going to go out of your relationship? So this is a major step, the attunement, where many couples falter. And it's usually because there's assumptions made about what the other person is feeling. And then, it really sets the couple down a bad path. So as soon as you notice that something's awry, it's really good to ask your partner, can we sit down and talk for a minute? I have a concern. I'm concerned that you're feeling something and there's something that's happening that's upsetting you. And I'd really like to understand it. So it's not giving up if there's some confusion. We all make bids of each other, which are at the heart of attunement. And you need to be able to perceive when there's a bid being made and to be able to respond in an effective way. And we all miss our partner's bids sometimes. But if that's happening, it can be upsetting to the partner. They can feel not important, not seen. And you can pick up clues that you're missing the bids by the way they're reacting. So you really want to find out and be able to read these bids in a more effective way. A couple can really help each other in this attunement process. And that's by not getting mad if the person that you are expecting to do something or made a request of, if it's not getting satisfactorily addressed. So to give them the benefit of the doubt at first in a non-judgmental way, to check out what their understanding is of what's going on. We all see things differently. And this is what I'm emphasizing so much here, that when you see your partner is not responding, they might have misread a signal. And this is where clarification and better communication is so important. So a way of doing this is not to express blame or criticism, but to ask for a need for clarification. Express a request. You want to focus on the future and moving forward in a more positive way. What's the missing piece of information that your partner may need to understand better what you're requesting? If their response is vague and it's not satisfying, you can ask for clarification. So what are some other things you can do to increase attunement and empathy? The check-in is really important. Recognizing and responding to bids and concerns without blame, defensiveness, or criticism. And this, I'm going to cover more of this when I talk about the last step, which is communication and conflict repair. But these are things that just stop the progress dead in the tracks when there's cross-complaining, blaming, defensiveness, and criticism. And the important thing is, we all default into that sometimes. We're not perfect, we're human. But the important thing is that you recognize it and you want to change it. That you have options and you can see that there's many different ways of addressing something. Last week in the men's group that I run, one of the healing partners said that he and his wife got into a rupture, and what really helped him was being able to be aware of all the different options that he had for how he could address this. So he really gave some thought to how can he address this in an effective way, and checked it out and tried some different things. And they were able to repair that rupture very, very quickly and immediately. So, I want to emphasize that ruptures happen to all couples. And especially when you're going through this, you're getting over just a lot of sensitivity that needs to be recognized. And ruptures are going to happen. But what's the most important thing is being able to be active and committed to going and repairing the rupture. Not going to old default reactions, which may be anger or stonewalling or withdrawing, that if both partners are really committed to understanding each other better, then they can, find out what's the rupture, why did this happen, and how to repair it. Finding out how to repair it is not that difficult when the communication is good, when the couple is proactive. Even a really hurt partner, I had a really hurt partner say last week, and they had just been through a disclosure that was pretty rough, but they said, I'm really interested in understanding, offending the betraying partner better. And that was so good to hear, that he knew the road to moving forward, to determining what's going to be the future for both of them, what will work for both of them, was really understanding each other. So some other things for improving attunement are catching up on each other's day, sharing your challenges and your successes, just making time to spend time together. And it doesn't always have to be talking about the relationship. Starting to spend time together in a relaxed, easy way, where you're just talking about, sports or something that you're going to do with the kids. And if you need an easy connecting activity that you are at a loss for, what can we say to each other? There's something called the 36 questions, and that was devised by a psychologist who had this belief that, showing interest in somebody and going deeper with that is a way that people really connect. And his conclusion was that it's a way that people can fall in love with each other. So it might be a good thing to try. You can Google 36 questions, and you and your partner might want to just ask them of each other. It's a really interesting way to just communicate on a little deeper, more profound level, but it's not dangerous. It's not like talking about the relationship so much in a challenging way. It's a very relaxed, and it can be a very pleasurable way of connecting. So one more thing is just again to focus on if there's a moment of misattunement, and before you attribute your frustration to the whole relationship being bad, look at what the specific need is, and you want to try to communicate and clarify on that need. And maybe there's other situations in your life that might be contributing to your frustration and discontent. And that's important to be able to identify those also, because letting your partner know what's going on in your life, what's challenging for you, it helps them understand your moods, and it helps them understand what, is going on inside you. So learning to share those challenges with each other and offering support is another way to move the connecting and the attunement forward. Another thing, one more point, is that giving your partner a heads up on what you need when you're communicating, in the sense of, I just need to vent. I had a bad day at work. I just need to talk to you about it. I don't need you to fix it or to tell me what to do. I just like you to really listen. And then you know how to respond to that. And it's a chance to have less probability of breaking the attunement because the other partner is not going to get back something that they feel dissatisfied with. So starting your communications with like a heads up of what, your request is, what you're looking for. So the next time we're going to talk about the sixth and last step of the repair process. And you can find all this information in my book, The Trust Solution, with all the tools that go along with it. And that's available on Amazon. So the next webinar, we're going to talk about having really good communication skills that are really effective, especially with conflict repair. You know when you have that skill, when you're confronted with somebody who's difficult or there's a difficult situation, and inside, this is just the way that I know I can handle it this way, and it will immediately bring the conflict down. Those are the skills I'm going to be talking about next time that are really handy to have during this process. So Tammy, do we have any questions?
We do, but I have a couple of things I wanted to mention. I love like the 36 questions, the ask, but it's also and listen. And you mentioned listening, because I think it's really easy to like be preparing your next thing. You're like, I'm going to say this, and rather than really hearing. So and you talked about, and actually one of the questions is about that, the kind of mirroring is what I hear you say is, and I think that that's really critical. One of the,
that's a really important point, really important.
I had this situation this week where a partner, and it could have been anybody, but it happened to be the partner, had the expectation that the betrayer, the healing partner, it was going to call rather than text, and but he didn't know that, so it was like she was upset. But it's what I heard you say, and I hear we're going to learn more about it next month too, is you have to clearly articulate what your needs are, what your expectations are. Nobody's a mind reader.
Exactly.
And if we want to be successful with this, we have to communicate. I really appreciated what you talked about with the man in your group who, where there was the rupture, and he understood he had options. And I think that we sometimes forget that because it's easy to go to an automatic reactive place, and to be able to take that pause and go, I have options, and I can choose a different path, I can choose a different action than hasn't worked for me in the past. So there's lots of it, and I think probably next week we can talk, or next month we can talk about it too, but like creating, because with communicating, how do we create the safe space so that and you mentioned practicing. Well, practice, we're not going to do it like you said with tennis. It's like we're going to practice, we're not going to be Serena Williams. We're gonna do it poorly, but we're going to continue to make some progress, and we're still going to have bad games, like Serena doesn't win every single game,
right.
So understanding and giving ourselves some space and grace, can be helpful. But we've got questions. So yeah, at the bottom of your screen.
Those are all really great points, Tammy. Thanks for bringing those all up.
So the first question is, we keep running into defensiveness in many situations, even when using recommended communication processes. What kind of work therapy is there for the healing partner to get to where he can be more present to hear the hurt partner and provide support? And so, this doesn't give like, any context of like how far they are in the journey. And it is a journey, and it can, like early on it's tougher, but so like answer it kind of generally, if you would, please.
Yeah. So, that's a skill that needs to be learned, to be able to respond to an effective way of responding, and to learn that being defensive is not effective. It's not going to get the person what they want. It's just going to stall the progress. So a good way for them to practice this is if they're a part of a group, like a men's group. That's a really good way to learn to respond to things, because the men hear stories about the interactions with the other men, and they hear, oh, this happened and my partner got upset. And the other men can say, hey, your response was not what they were looking for. And they can, call each other and learn how that their default responses, those are old default responses. Another thing is individual therapy for the healing partner. When someone has like an entrenched personality where they're so defensive, they really have to learn how to lean forward. And that's in our men's group. That's a big emphasis that we put on the partners. How do you lean in? And learning to lean in is not being defensive, not covering yourself up and running to run away. So I would say that resources, this is something hard to fix on your own, especially to identify, well, I feel you're defensive. That's going to come up as critical, but it could be brought to awareness. And I think a way that it's often effective to express things as a need, as I'd like us to be able to learn to communicate in a non-defensive manner. And that way it's not critical, it's not blaming, it's something that we can work on together to not be defensive. Can we set up a system where we just kind of let each other know when the response is feeling defensive, and that we can just try to reframe it, to say it another way. So.
And you mentioned earlier to take a pause too, and I think that that's a really important, but talking about that prior to when there's a kerfluffle, like making sure that it's like, here's the plan, because we know this is going to happen. Every relationship has it. So how do we go, okay, I need to ground myself, I need to do whatever, and then I'm going to come back, because because I'm not going to be able to find those options and make different choices. So being able to take the pause, but with I'm going to come back, and having a specified amount of time, checking in, okay, I'm ready to talk, okay, I'm not quite ready, I need to go call my sponsor, whatever. Because unfortunately, sometimes it's like, I'm going to take a pause, and then I'm going to avoid talking to you about that. So I'm just never going to bring that subject back up again. So making sure that as part of the communication, we will address this, but I want to think about it.
And that's part of the agreement that, like you said, it needs to be talked about and made as an agreement when they're not in the middle of a conflict, so that they each say, this is something healthy for our relationship. If either of us feels dysregulated or that we're having a difficult time proceeding, let's agree to have a signal. Or a lot of couples, they make up a funny word, like puppies or mittens or something. And then when they say this is the sign, okay, we're just going to pause. And they also have the agreement that the person that asked for the pause needs to come back to it, that it's not stonewalling. It has to be differentiated from stonewalling. And I love this tool. This tool is so useful when you're in a very close relationship with anybody, like in my family system. We all use this, as people get dysregulated, upset. Okay, we need to hit the pause button.
The staples, easy does it. Now we need a pause button for it. Okay, so the next question is, does Thanos work early in recovery when the hurt partner is often and very regularly, 2 times per day, dysregulated and angry? Disclosure was 6 weeks ago. I'm assuming that was formal therapeutic disclosure, not just discovery. So, but it says disclosure. So thoughts on Thanos early on?
Okay, so I think putting Thanos into practice as soon as possible. So one thing you could do is you could try it. I really encourage my couples to do it as soon as possible, especially because it creates a safer way of communicating. That after the disclosure, it's a very emotional time, and it kind of confines the conversation to things that aren't going to be destructive. It's not one partner continuing to delve into, well, why did you do this or why did you do that, which can certainly be discussed in couples therapy. But I think that the important thing is for the couple to start learning to do a communication that's more positive, where they can identify the needs. It's a place for the hurt partner to say, after the disclosure, this is what I need to try to feel better. The challenges, it's a place where the healing partner can say, I'm really challenged with, I really want to be able to provide some comfort for you after the disclosure. And it's challenging. It's owning things. It's a really, and 10 minutes, maximum with the check-in. So it keeps the conversation confined and very safe. So I think it's really important because it is so safe. So the sooner the couple can do it, the better. And if you're having trouble with it, sometimes what I'll do is I'll have them do it in a couple session and see how they're doing it, so they can learn to practice it there and see where the problem is. And especially, in conjunction with being able to hit the pause button, if they have that tool to use where, as they're starting to learn it and it's practice, that they can get out of it, without it devolving into something really destructive.
And I think it's really important to have both of you checking in. It isn't just, I'm showing up and I'm telling you what I'm doing. It's like, the feelings of the betrayed partner, if you had formal therapeutic disclosure, I'm still thinking, 6 weeks ago, I'm thinking you're still within the first year of the recovery process. Well, like the betrayed partner is 12 to 24 months behind you, because you've known all this time what you were doing, and they got hit by the Mack truck. So so they are going to be just, everything has been turned, upside down. So, we do a lot of work with this, with the guys that are in our treatment program, about empathy and attunement and things like that. So, but it is, like Dr. Mary said earlier, it's practice, and it's just, you won't do it perfectly. You just, keep trying. And when something is working, try more of that, or go, oh, that was useful. Okay, that one didn't work so well. But but if you're past formal therapeutic disclosure, then couples therapy with a qualified professional is probably good timing.
So
okay,
yeah, I think the practice component is so important to understand that, learning to communicate this way, especially for the healing partners, they really don't know what they're supposed to do or supposed to say. And so they really have to learn this, and learning it with a formula like Thanos is an easy way for them to show up with empathy, with interest. And the more they learn to show up in that manner, the better things are going to get.
And it's going to feel awkward. It's not going to sound like you have empathy early on. I mean, it's like that's a foreign skill to people early in recovery. But the more you practice, and again, I go back to and it isn't just preparing my rebuttal. It's, how do I listen? What I hear you say is, which goes right to the next question, which says, can you do an easy sample of the dialogue process that you share in your book, similar to Harville Hendricks has worked on? My partner thinks it's silly and feels like mirroring never really ends. I disagree. Help with a sample, please. That's a great question.
Okay, so maybe I'll use a sample from my own life. And, it's not, I'll take a low impact situation. So my husband and I, we get into these disputes and ruptures about how many books we have in our house. And I'm always trying to sneak the books out, and he's always finding them and saying, no. And then we'll get into a heated argument. And then it's like, okay, can we slow this down, and who has the concern here? The person that is most bothered needs to express their concern with none blaming, none criticism. So say, for example, I would say, I'm concerned that we have all these books piling up and no place to put them. And the house is getting so cluttered, and it's really uncomfortable for me. And so instead of him immediately going to a counter argument, and it's like this, which is the normal communication pattern, you put this extra step in where he would have to say, okay, so what you're concerned about is the books are piling up with no place to put them, and you're concerned that there's too much clutter for you to feel comfortable in the house. Did I get it? And I would say, yes, you did. So then there's like a connection. You feel understood, you feel heard. And then the next step that you can go to pretty easily after that is both of you can say, well, what if we did this? Or what if we did that? But you can't go to the problem solving until the connection is established. So the first goal is just to be able to state what your concern is, for your partner to be able to hear that concern accurately and without judgment, without like, oh, you're crazy, or we're not going to do that, but to hear it in a spirit of cooperation. And once that connection gets established, the next part happens so much easier. I can't tell you. But the more you practice this, my husband and I have been using this process for so many years, and it works just great, you know?
So using that example, now, if he comes to you and says, but this is what the books mean to me, like, so that you're still having the communication, but it's like you're sharing what your concerns are, and he's able to then share his, like, what I mean, your books are really important to me, what, for whatever reason, and then you can hear that, but then you can both hear that, and then how can you navigate it?
And then so the other partner would respond back. So yeah, I'm hearing that this is important to you, and that you really want to be able to find a solution that respects your feelings about this. And then they feel heard too. And that's where you're moving forward together. It takes it out of the power struggle, out of the battle. And this is a skill that you get better and better with at practice. Both couples have to buy into it. And before you've done it a couple times, people tend to be critical. They think like, oh, that's silly, or but once you really learn it and put it into practice effectively, it works so well. And it's just, you can't minimize it and discard it before you've even really seen the benefit of it.
Another one that another one of our webinar hosts, Kristen Snowden, has talked about, and I use often, is the story I'm telling myself. So the story I'm telling myself when the books pile up is that, that the books are more important than having a clean space. Whatever, I'm making this up, but then it takes it off of, you are hoarding books, and you're spending all our, whatever, like the fears and things, but having it be the story I'm telling myself, and somebody
That's
can go,
a great phrase. That's really a good thing to put in there.
Yeah. But it's also then this is the story I'm telling you. You can say, well, that, I hear that's what you're saying, or that's what you're here telling yourself, but this is, this is what's happening,
Right. Like just owning that this is my feelings about it, not as a fact, instead of getting into that, well, somebody's right and somebody's wrong. It's just two people that feel differently about something.
And and this person had said it feels like it never ends, but life is a conversation, so the more we're communicating in a safe space, so yeah, it may continue to feel like you're in that reflective thing, but if you're attuning more, which is what Dr. Mary was talking about earlier, it's the attunement, you're going to get closer to what each other is really saying and feeling. If you're able to step into, everything feels awkward when you first start learning it. It's like, go back to the tennis. It's practicing.
It's like practicing. So what do they say again about it never ends?
It said, my partner thinks it's silly and feels like mirroring never really ends.
Okay, so they're not really buying into the process. They're not giving it a chance. So that's like, that would be a request in terms of agreements, like going back to their partner's basic willingness to work together. Like for me, this is a skill that I think could really help us. Would you be willing to work on this with me? And that's what you're asking for. You're asking for an agreement for them to work on it with you. You don't have to agree that it's great right now. It's just, can we try this?
Okay, so then the next one is easy. So these are tremendously helpful. Thank you for that. How do you access these? I put it in the chat, but on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Under the resource tab, you'll see previously recorded webinars, all of the previously recorded. So this one will be up, if not later today, but probably then by tomorrow morning. So you can find the library there. So, okay, the next one. Hello, my wife is triggered daily. Now she asked me to sleep in the couch for the next few days. I do respect her boundaries. I have been trying to talk to her, but she is really angry. I am in good recovery for 17 months. I come to meetings and work on my third step with my sponsor. I hold space for her pain and I can put myself on her shoes. How can I come close to her at this point, or should I give her space right now? My fear is that me giving her space feels like I'm avoiding her pain.
So what's going on right here is there's a missing communication. You're trying as hard as you can to do the right thing, but you don't know what's off. And that's a point where, many couples get hung up. And that's where attunement comes in. So it's important for her to understand that, we need to have a way of communicating that I can better understand what affects you. Excuse me. That, as I said before, there's going to be moods, there's going to be triggers, and if we talk to her and you said something like, I'm seeing that you're hurt, you're disturbed, and I just like to know more about it. I'd like to know, is it when you think about something that was done before? Is it something that you've seen now? Is it something that I'm doing? It's really important for me to have more information about this, to be able to answer your need and to be able to speak that way to her. So I'm wondering what gets in the way if you try to do that, if you try to talk to her that way. Will she stonewall you? Will she just cut you off and refuse to answer? And sometimes maybe somebody might need that period to calm down. She might need that. But if it continues for a while, I think that's a good point for some couples therapy, to get you both in the room and have a skilled facilitator get the conversation going so that you can get out of her what is causing this problem for her. Because until you understand it, it's really hard for you to take an effective action, and that's very frustrating.
And so, and this is with all due respect, but if you're 17 months and you're only on step 3, I'm sorry, like the stuff, the magic happens in steps 4 through 9. That's where we clean up the wreckage of our past. So you're working with your sponsor. I would encourage you to make a commitment. I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Within the next month, make sure you've completed step 4 and have a plan and schedule for step 5. That's where all of this stuff begins. You can sit for 17 months in meetings and be listening and doing all that, but it's working the steps. I shared on a webinar previously, early in recovery, someone used the elevator to recovery is broken, please use the steps. You have to use the steps, and steps 1 through 3, I love them. But in the olden days, they would take newcomers through the 12 steps, like, you're brand new, we're going to go through them. And then you did them again. So I get challenged with, and it's a personal thing. I've been around a while, but I find that the people that hesitate and don't get 4 through 9, that's where the promises start to come true. And so if you want the benefits of the program, you got to do those steps. So that's my nudge and encouragement for you. No shaming, but just an invitation. So
yeah, to be able to understand what are some of your character defects, and to be able to start to understand, what kind of amends need to be made. Like if your partner can see that you're working on these steps and you're trying to identify this, she can join you and understand, I'm really trying to understand what some of these character defects are. Maybe you could enlighten me. But the important thing is to have the communication and in a way that, like Tammy says, you can do your work without your partner being present. You can keep going through all these steps, even if they're not joining you.
Yes, and actually that action starts to, people see us change. It's our actions. It's what we're doing, not
Actions,
what we're
right.
saying. So,
Right.
and we have one more question, comment. When my husband says that may be the story you are thinking is painful, feels like he's not mirroring or empathetic, it comes across as him being defensive. And I think I would share that. The story I'm telling myself when you say that is that you're being defensive and you're not stepping into the relationship. I don't know how long you've been, I don't know how long you've been on this path, and I'm sorry that it feels painful, and I hear that. But I think I hope that you can communicate with him is this feels defensive to me. What I'm looking for is this, be really clear about what would be helpful to you. And hopefully he practices that. So thoughts, Dr. Mary?
I think another way of expressing it in terms of just identifying defensive, which can come off as maybe blaming or criticism, like using the phrase that Tammy suggested, the story I tell myself. It's like when you respond to me this way, the story I tell myself is that you're interested in justifying your behavior to me, and I don't feel that you're really receiving the information, that I don't feel that you're quite understanding how it affected me. And my request would be that if you could say something to me that helps me understand that I'm really being heard, that you're really getting what was difficult to me about this situation. Could we try to work on that? And that would be one way of starting it. Another way of starting it is if he's in a group, and explains the interaction in the group and how his wife responds, then you get so much support and so many ideas. But I think the important thing is not reacting negatively to the defensiveness as much as is possible. I know it's so frustrating, but finding other ways to approach that defensiveness, to adjust, reframe it instead of you're when you're being defensive, because it's like when anybody hears that, it's like, oh, you're being this. And like Tammy said, going to, this is when you respond that way, the story I tell myself, that puts it in a different, more cooperative venue.
So we're out of time. Thank you all for the great questions. Again, this recording will be on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, the work groups, 6-week courses, and there's a couples healing from betrayal work group starting May 5th. Lots of great resources on seeking integrity. And for those that need a higher level of help, there is no more expert treatment program than what the clinical team at Seeking Integrity offers. So you can always reach out to me, Tammy, Tami, at seekingintegrity.com. Dr. Mary, I look forward to seeing you at the beginning of May, and we'll talk about the 6th component and communication, which we can all learn from. So thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tammy. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.